Ugwuda was a city that never really slept. From the first crowing of the rooster in the morning to the last whistle of night crickets, life hummed through its veins like the steady beating of a drum. Traders crowded the markets with their wares. Palm wine tappers staggered home after selling their day's catch, and the young girls, slim, proud, with their wrappers tied tightly at the waist, moved about in groups, gossiping about fashion, men, and whose hair shone brighter in the sun. In a city like this, beauty was not just vanity, it was power. A girl who wore her hair neat and shining, with fresh plaits aligned like the rows of a newly weeded farm, carried herself differently. She walked into the market, and women turned to look. She passed the village square, and young men whistled under their breath. Even at the churches on Sundays, when choirs lifted songs to the heavens, eyes often strayed not to the altar, but to the girl whose hair caught the light like strands of gold. That was why the name of one woman echoed louder than the voices of 100 preachers. Nobody even remembered when she came to Ugwuda, or from which family she sprang. Some said she was from Bano, others swore she was from Owerri, but the truth was that no one really knew. What everyone agreed upon was that her hands were unlike the hands of ordinary women. They called her Adiz the Hair Woman, though some whispered her name only in private, as if it carried a strange weight. Adiz's shop was a modest structure at the corner of Nkwo Ugwuda Market Road. From afar, it looked ordinary, paint peeling on the zinc roof, wooden benches lined outside, the usual sight of a hairdresser's signboard nailed crookedly to the wall. But once you stepped inside, you felt something shift, like you had crossed into another world. The air was always scented with powder, coconut oil, and that sharp chemical fragrance of relaxers. On the walls, pictures of hairstyles cut out from magazines were plastered: shuku, all back, thread, Ghana weaving, twists, and every other style a girl could dream of. From dawn till the cock crowed for the second time, women and girls gathered outside her shop, dragging stools and quarreling over who came first. It was not unusual to see 10, 15, sometimes 20 girls waiting in line, wrappers tied, hair undone, waiting for Adiz's touch. Her fingers moved like lightning, swift, firm, precise. She could plait a full head in less than 30 minutes, and when she was done, the hair looked like something sculpted, something divine. Other hairdressers in the city envied her. They too had learnt the craft, bending over heads for hours, but none of them could match Adiz's speed or neatness. Some of them complained bitterly. This woman is using something. Day ordinary. How one person go plait 20 heads in one day? But their complaints carried no weight, because every girl who wanted to be admired, who wanted to be called beautiful, who wanted to capture the eyes of men, knew there was only one shop worth going to. Adiz herself was a mystery that only deepened as the years went by. She was always in her shop, always seated with her legs crossed, her face powdered, her lips painted red or sometimes purple. Not once did anybody see her without makeup. Her eyebrows were always perfectly drawn, her skin glowed as though polished, and her clothes were neat, wrappers of rich George material or lace blouses that shimmered under the sun. Yet, for all her beauty, there was one thing missing. Adiz hardly smiled. Her face was often straight, her eyes sharp and serious, and if she laughed at all, it was the briefest of chuckles that died almost immediately. Another thing that made her stranger was that nobody knew where she lived. Traders who passed through the city swore they had never seen her walking home, never seen her carrying firewood, never seen her at the stream fetching water. All they knew was that every morning, before the first light of day fully spread across Ugwuda, Adiz was already in her shop, seated like a queen awaiting her subjects. And when night came, and the last customer left, Adiz would lock her door. What happened after that, nobody could say. But if her life was mysterious, her success was undeniable. Money flowed into her hands like water rushing into a clay pot. By the time she had been in Ugwuda for 5 years, her body had grown full and heavy from comfort. She wore gold bangles on her wrists, her nails were always polished, and when she walked into the market to buy attachments, people stepped aside for her. She had become a woman of weight in the city, not just because of her size, but because of her wealth and influence. Women adored her work. Girls would save their last kobo just to sit on her bench. Some mothers brought their daughters from faraway towns like Mbez and Orlu just so Adiz could plait their hair for weddings. Even the wives of titled men, Men who sat on the council of elders humbled themselves to join the queue outside her shop. Yet, for all the love she received, there was still an undercurrent of unease. Traders in the market sometimes whispered, "This woman 2 days shine. Ordinary person no day like this. Which kind of hand she get way day fast like machine? And you know to say she no day greet anybody well? She just day serious. Day plait hair like say her life depend on am. Something day, but what in person fit do? Not her hand, all the girls day rush." So, Aguada continued to thrive under Adi's reign. Her shop never went empty, her name never left the lips of the city, and her wealth continued to grow. To outsiders, she was simply a gifted woman, a rare beauty with golden hands. But to those who lived close enough to watch her every day, there was something deeper, something strange that they could not yet name. And as the years rolled by, the whispers only grew stronger. Because how could a woman live in a city for so long, and nobody knew her family, her kinsmen, or even the door to her house? By the time the sun rose fully over Aguada each day, the street where Adi's shop stood had already turned into a small marketplace of its own. Women gathered in clusters, some with basins of attachments balanced on their heads, others clutching combs and wrappers. The queue in front of her shop was a sight to behold, long, noisy, and restless like a line of restless ants. It was never a quiet wait. The sound of women's voices carried across the street like the ringing of church bells. Gossip about whose daughter just got engaged, which man was caught with another woman, whose farm yielded the best yam harvest, and, of course, endless discussions about hairstyles. Every now and then, two women would quarrel bitterly over who came first. "Ada Inani, Biko, I was here before you," one would shout, her hands on her hips, wrapper slipping as she gestured wildly. "Lili, I sat here since the cock crowed. If you don't have shame, at least fear God," the other would fire back. And then the other women, waiting patiently with tired eyes, would laugh, shake their heads, and beg them to keep quiet before Adiz herself came out to frown at the commotion. Because that was another thing about Adiz, she hated noise. While the women waiting outside often behaved like market goats tied together with one rope, the moment a customer entered her shop and sat on the wooden stool before her, silence fell. Her presence demanded quiet. The only sounds inside were the soft snip of scissors, the scrape of combs through hair, and the rhythmic motion of her fingers weaving braids like a spider spinning its web. Her speed was astonishing. A girl could enter with a head full of rough, tangled hair, and within a short while emerge with neat cornrows glittering with beads, or a complex Ghana weaving that looked like artwork. And no matter how fast she worked, her hands never stumbled, never left a braid crooked, never left a strand hanging loose. By midday, while other hairdressers in Aguada struggled to finish 2 or 3 heads, Adiz would have already finished 7 or 8. The demand for her work grew so great that mothers began sending their daughters at dawn to book seat before they even prepared breakfast. Some girls even slept on mats near her shop just to be among the first in line the next morning. Others formed secret alliances, paying friends to hold spaces for them. Yet, no matter how early they came, there was always someone already seated on the bench before them. "It is like the queue never ends," one woman once complained in frustration. "Even if you come before the cock crows, you will still find 10 people waiting." The truth of her words spread quickly through Aguada. People began to call Adiz's shop Ihin Pachi, the place where time itself bent. Because how could she plait so many heads in a day without tiring? And how could so many women sit and wait from morning till night, yet never succeed in clearing the queue? It was as if the line of customers never had a beginning or an end. Meanwhile, the money poured in like rainwater filling a clay pot. Each hairstyle had its price, and Adiz never reduced her charges. Yet nobody complained. Girls would save coins from their petty trading. Women would deny themselves small luxuries, all just to afford a seat at her stool. By the time she collected from 10 or 15 customers in a single day, her hands jingled with cash. And when she lifted her wrapper to tie it tightly around her waist, the edge of the fabric sometimes revealed glimpses of a waist pouch heavy with notes. Soon, even the wives of titled men and chiefs came to her shop. Their cars would park noisily in front, drivers opening doors for them as they descended in lace blouses heavy with embroidery. And yet, despite their wealth and position, They too sat patiently on the wooden benches outside like every other woman. Adiz never gave preference to anyone, no matter her status. To her, all heads were equal, all customers the same. That impartiality, though strange to some, added to her allure. But in the shadows of her fame, unease grew. The other hairdressers in Ugwuda began to whisper among themselves. Do you not see? This woman is taking all our customers. Even girls from Orlu and Mbaze now pass 10 hairdressers on their way just to sit in her shop. And tell me, how can one woman plait 20 heads in one day? Does she not tire? Does her back not ache? Ordinary hands cannot do this. Something else is working inside her fingers. Their jealousy hardened into suspicion. Some even tried to follow her home at night, hoping to uncover her secret. But Adiz was too clever, or perhaps too strange for them. No matter how they lingered around her shop at closing time, once she locked the wooden door and turned the key, she seemed to vanish. By the time they tried to trail her, she was nowhere to be found. Maybe she does not have a house, one woman suggested uneasily. Or maybe she lives with spirits, another replied, her voice dropping low, as though the walls themselves might hear. Yet no amount of suspicion could quench the hunger of Ugwuda's women for Adiz's golden hands. As each day broke, the queue returned, long and restless, like the line of ants chasing spilled palm oil. The women sat, quarreled, laughed, waited, and whispered, all for the privilege of leaving her shop with heads that shone like carved ebony under the sun. And Adiz, silent and unsmiling, continued to weave her braids, swift, neat, and flawless, day after day, year after year. But in the quiet corners of Ugwuda, where gossip brewed stronger than palm wine, tongues were beginning to wag more boldly. This Adiz is not ordinary. Mark my words, something will soon happen. The hairdressing trade in Ugwuda had once been shared like cola and nut among many women. In almost every street, one could hear the scraping of combs, the chatter of girls, and the sharp snap of rubber bands as hairdressers worked from morning till night. Some were known for threading styles, others for bold shuku that stood tall like clay pots, while a few specialized in simple cornrows for schoolgirls. But since Adiz's arrival, things had changed. The small salons that once buzzed with customers now sat half empty. The women who once commanded respect in their neighborhoods as Uni-isi, the woman who makes hair, now found themselves idle, twisting their fingers in frustration while the crowd ran to Adiz's shop. At first, they consoled themselves with laughter. Leave them, one would say, shaking her head. When they are tired of queuing like goats at Adiz's shop, they will return to us. True talk, another agreed. Can she plait the whole city? We have hands. But months turned to years, and the tide did not change. The benches in Adiz's shop overflowed with customers, while their own shops echoed with emptiness. Some hairdressers abandoned the business entirely, turning to frying akra or selling palm oil in the market. Others stayed, but bitterness grew in their hearts like weeds in an untended farm. It was at one such gathering, behind Mama Chinyer's small salon near the stream, that the complaints spilled over into plotting. Have you noticed? Mama Chinyer began, her voice lowered though no one else was around. No matter how early you pass Adiz's shop, she is already there, seated, face painted, waiting. And when night comes, no matter how long you linger, you will never see her go home. The women murmured their agreement. Is she not a human being like us? Does she not have a house, a family? Tell me, who has ever seen her at the stream fetching water? Or in the market buying foodstuff? Another added quickly. She comes only to buy attachments, and even then she chooses so fast, as if she already knows what she wants. She never bargains, never haggles over price. Ordinary women always bargain. They shook their heads in silence. She is not ordinary, Mama Chinyer concluded, her lips tightening. I say it with my chest, something is backing that woman. Those hands of hers are not just hands. Spirits are inside them. The others crossed themselves, some muttering prayers under their breath. But though fear lingered in their eyes, envy burned hotter. We must follow her, one finally suggested. If we know where she goes after she locks her shop, then we will know the truth. They agreed. It was settled like a pact among them. That night, when the day's last customer rose from Adiz's stool and the shop was finally emptied of chatter, 3 women hid in the shadows of the nearby mango tree. They waited as Adiz swept the floor, dusted her mirror, and locked the wooden door. Then she turned the key, tucked it into her waist pouch, and paused. For a moment, she stood still, the streetlight catching the shine of her powdered face. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, scanned the street as though she knew someone was watching. The women behind the tree pressed their backs against the bark, hearts thumping. And then, in the blink of an eye, Adiz was gone. Not gone in the way of someone walking briskly into the night. Not gone in the way of someone mounting a motorcycle and riding away. She was simply gone. One moment she was standing there in the streetlight, and the next moment, the space was empty. The women gasped, clapping their hands over their mouths to stifle their cries. "Chinikme," one whispered, trembling. "Did you see that? She vanished. Vanished like air." Another said, her knees shaking. The third, too terrified to speak, could only nod rapidly. By the time they crept back to their homes, their tongues had loosened. They whispered what they had seen to their husbands, to their sisters, to their closest friends. And by morning, the story had already begun to move like harmattan fire across Ugwuda. Adiz, the hair woman, disappears at night. But gossip in Ugwuda was a strange thing. Even though the whispers spread, nobody stopped going to her shop. If anything, the crowd only grew larger. Fear, instead of pushing women away, seemed to draw them closer. It was as though the very strangeness surrounding Adiz made her more desirable. "Spirits or no spirits?" one young girl said boldly as she joined the line. "Let her plait my hair. When my head is fine, will it not attract men? Is that not what matters?" And others laughed and agreed. But strange signs soon began to show. A few of Adiz's customers complained of odd dreams. Dreams of shadows combing their hair in the night, of mirrors that showed their faces with Adiz's eyes staring back. One girl swore she woke to find strands of her hair on her pillow moving like snakes. The city dismissed these things as childish imagination, but deep in the hearts of many, unease grew heavier. Meanwhile, Adiz sat in her shop each day, painting faces with her beauty, plaiting heads with her swift fingers, and never once smiling. The queue never ended. The envy never ceased. And the questions, whispered in the corners of Ugwuda, grew louder with each passing day. Who was this woman, really? And what power lay hidden in the hands that wove beauty faster than any human possibly could? Ugwuda was a city used to noise. In the day, the market roared with traders. In the evening, children ran about in the dust, playing Tintin and Sue. At night, men gathered in front of drinking houses, their laughter mixing with the sound of high-life music. But as the years passed under Adiz's shadow, the noise began to thin, as though something unseen was pressing down on the life of the city. It began quietly, so quietly that no one noticed at first. A girl, freshly plaited from Adiz's shop, woke one night screaming. Her mother rushed to her, only to find her clawing at her scalp, wailing that she could feel fingers weaving her hair in the dark. When they lit a lantern, there was no one there, only her braids shining under the flame, neat and perfect. Days later, another girl swore she saw her reflection in the mirror smiling back at her when her own lips were still. A newly married woman said that every night since Adiz had plaited her hair, she heard whispers in her room. Whispers that sounded like combs scraping and voices chanting in a language she could not understand. The stories multiplied. Some laughed them off, but others began to tremble. Mothers started watching their daughters closely after they returned from Adiz's shop. Some rubbed holy oil on their children's scalps before they slept. Priests in the churches began praying more fervently, but their voices carried unease rather than authority. The whispers in the city grew into a heavy murmur. This woman is not ordinary. Her hands are not just weaving hair. They are weaving spirits into our daughters. Since when did human fingers move like machines? But still, the women kept going. Beauty has always been a powerful lure. Even in the face of fear, vanity tugged stronger at the heart. A girl whose hair was plaited by Adiz could walk into the market and command attention, could sit in church and feel the eyes of men burning holes into her back. And so the queue never emptied. Yet, the turning point came one harmattan evening, during Ugwuda's annual festival of beauty and dance. That year, the square was alive with drummers pounding rhythms that made the very ground shake. Girls dressed in their finest wrappers, beads clinking around their necks, hair glistening under the setting sun. Many of them had rushed to Adiz's shop for the festival. and their heads shone like carved ebony, style so perfect that even the older women could not stop staring. The crowd clapped, the dancers moved, and the festival burned brightly, until one girl in the center suddenly froze. She was a slender thing, barely 17, her hair freshly braided into a crown of tiny weaves. At first, people thought she was simply showing off another dance step. But then her body stiffened, her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed to the ground. A scream tore through the crowd. Drums fell silent. Men rushed forward to lift her, but as they did, the girl let out a voice that was not her own. Deep, guttural, like stones grinding against each other. "She is ours," the voice growled, echoing through the square. Women scattered, ululating in terror. The girl's mother fell to her knees, crying. And as the crowd tried to restrain her, her braids seemed to shimmer, moving as though alive, each strand writhing like a snake. The festival ended in chaos. The next morning, Ugwodo woke in fear. Nobody could deny what they had seen. The whispers that had lived in shadows now stood tall in daylight. Adiz was not human. It spread like wildfire, her vanishing at night, her unending speed, the dreams, the voices, the girl who had spoken with a demon's tongue. By midday, her shop was empty for the first time in years. The benches outside, once crowded with laughter and quarrels, stood deserted. And Adiz herself? She was there, seated as always, her face powdered, her lips painted, her eyes sharp. But she did not call out to anyone, did not beckon. She simply sat in silence, as though waiting. That evening, as the last rays of sun dipped behind the hills, she stood, locked her shop as usual, and disappeared into the night. But this time, she did not return. Days passed, then weeks. The shop remained closed, its wooden door gathering dust, cobwebs stringing themselves across its corners. Some said they still heard combs scratching and whispers from inside at night. Others swore they saw a faint glow under the door, like firelight. But no one dared to go near. Fear swallowed Ugwood whole. Women abandoned hairdressing entirely. The once bustling salons of the city lay quiet, their chairs empty, their mirrors dull. Girls tied scarves and wrappers over their heads, or shaved their hair low, anything to avoid the memory of Adiz's golden hands. For years, not a single plate was woven openly in the city. Beauty had been replaced with dread. In time, Adiz became less a woman and more a warning. Mothers told their daughters the tale at night, their voices hushed. Do not run after every shining thing you see. Not every hand that makes you beautiful is meant for you. Some beauty belongs to spirits, and spirits always demand their share. And so Ugwood lived on, scarred and silenced by a woman who had once sat in a shop with her painted face, weaving hair faster than any mortal could. Even now, they say, if you pass by that abandoned shop in the deep of night, you might hear the faint scrape of a comb, the quiet hum of a woman working, and the whisper of hair being braided by hands no longer of this world. And if you are foolish enough to lean close, you may hear her voice, low and serious, saying, "Sit, it is your turn."